What do you make of the claim from Janet Yellen that the U.S. is facing a catastrophe if it doesn't raise the debt ceiling once again?
Well, same old, that's my thought, because they've gone through that, and I think you mentioned it. This has happened a lot of times, and they always end up raising it because there's a coalition in Washington that nobody wants to admit to, and it's a coalition of Democrats and Republicans, and they like the same thing. They're locked in. They can't do anything other than raise the debt limit, keep spending, keep printing the money. It's just a matter of who's doing it and who gets to pass out the dough. They say, oh, well, part of this thing that we're talking about now is infrastructure. Everybody's for infrastructure, but even that part is not just infrastructure. It has all this other thing. And they're not talking about a couple million or 100 million here. They're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars now. But no, while I was there for a good many years, it would come up almost annually or quite frequently, but they always change it. And to tell you the truth, I don't think it matters because, like when COVID hits or these other crises hit and the stock market and there's financial crises, the Fed is in a position where it can pass out a lot of money, just extend the credit and to the people they like, the business people, the banking people, the foreign governments, so they can do so much, but they still have to play this game that we have this debt limit that we have to pass and in order to write the next check. That's just grandstanding, no matter what. Even if they were trying to follow the rules, what they would do is after about a month or two, they'd be coming up short and they'd have an emergency appropriation and they'd pass it. And just think of how easy it is for them to suspend efforts like impeachment processes in order for everybody to get together and vote to keep the government going. So that's what's going to happen. It'll keep going. They have a printing press running constantly, and they are not going to shrink the size of government. We're destined to have the end of this in a very difficult way. It'll be a major economic catastrophe in order to stop this mess.
What happens if we truly don't raise the debt ceiling? We do default. It seems like in the United States, deficits and debt doesn't really matter anymore.
Well, it does, but the default is out of their control. There's always a default. The only question is, how do they default? If they ran out of checks, they don't have any money in Treasury, what are we going to do for Social Security and send our foreign aid and all these things and take care of our military? The checks will always go out. Just think of the crisis that we just got ourselves involved in. I mean, trillions of dollars. I was amazed at how efficient they were. They had checks going to every house in this country. It was faster tthan helicopters. Bernanke promised he'll pass money out with helicopters. Well, it was much faster. It was through a computer, but the default is always there. There has to be a liquidation of the bad spending, the malinvestment, and the debt. So therefore, they will always inflate. They will always send a check, and they have the liquidation because real debt goes down. Just to simplify it, if you double the money supply and the value of the dollar, goes in half, you only owe half as much in real value. They always do it that way, and they always use these scare tactics to get people to play the political game of who are the saints and who will do well and who will spend the money properly, and they go and argue this through. But eventually it's going to come to an end, and I smell it that it's getting closer because what they're doing is so outrageous, but they will not default and quit sending checks. And I argue there's too much bipartisanship, but a lot of the fanfare is real. It's over power and personalities. But if they have to have a bill where they would cut our military budget and decide we spend too much money overseas, there is not going to be many dissenters. Sometimes we could get 5 people to agree to that. No, it will continue. Are they going to ever do what they have to do? They have to cut spending if they want to have a correction. But both parties are for the welfare state. Some like corporate welfare more than the other kind of welfare, but they're all for the welfare state. They're all for the Federal Reserve. They're all for deficits don't matter. And the rest of it is fanfare. But the important thing that they're arguing over, who gets to make the final decision to where the checks are sent and which particular special interest that will get the benefit. And that goes on all the time. So it's a big deal, but there are certain things. The foreign policy won't change overall. Yeah, even though they're fighting about, Biden is being inept in foreign policy. Believe me, we're not bringing our troops home. It's not going to happen. We're going to be interventionists. We have an empire to defend, and there's no real opposition to that. There's no real opposition to welfareism. And of course, I think the worst kind of welfareism is the corporate welfareism, which is very much involved in the financial system and engaged with by the Federal Reserve. Well, the American people should wake up and realize that this is coming to an end, and there are solutions, and they're not difficult. If an individual does this, they know that, wow, that's real bankruptcy. I have to pay the bills. Yes, maybe I can get a bailout from the government or something will happen. But we have to realize this bankruptcy is, the corruption is in the destruction of the money. And if people don't understand that, they'll never say, well, you ought to cut spending. Isn't that the solution? No, they're never going to accept that. So that's why people should be prepared for a lot more inflation. And right now, price inflation is raising its ugly head, and what they refer to is the CPI and the PPI as telling us how much inflation we have, but they're looking in the wrong place. That's a consequence of the inflation. The inflation. Look at the charts of what happened to the money supply just in these since 1971, but also a year and a half ago since we've had COVID. The charts are just skyrocketing, and they can only be sustained by amplifying that and doing more and more and more until the people lose confidence in the dollar. Right now, there's a lot of confidence still remaining with the dollar, and people will still take our dollars. But eventually, the confidence in government right now is going down. The confidence in the dollar is less. We are not as strong. We don't have an international currency as strong as it was. Had the currency anyway, but that's going to end, and people have to realize that. So I'm concerned about what happens to that, because we've already seen the breakdown of society here. With the COVID, the riots on the streets, and the breakdown of law and order. Well, how do we solve the problem? Fire the police, get rid of the police. We don't want them meddling. So it doesn't matter. As soon as they have a problem that they created, they just do more of it. Well, they pretend they know what they're doing is dangerous. And in 2019, they decided to shrink the balance sheet, and they did that for a few months. And the stock market didn't like it. And the Federal Reserve #1 chore is to keep the stock market high and thriving. And that's their #1 constituent. It has nothing to do with a healthy economy. And the real truth is wealth is being transferred under this system, and it goes from the more socialistic and authoritarian you get, the greater the attack is on the middle class. And the middle class is shrinking. There are a lot more poor people. We have more people out on the streets than ever before, but they're doing the same thing. But that is a predictable event. The hard thing is how do you get a majority of the people to say, you know what, I think Dr. Paul may just be right on this. I think we have to cut back on our own budget at home, and they have to pay off the debt and go back to work. But countries don't do that. We're not unique in this aspect. It's just getting caught up because we have been spending way over our heads. And I really put the blame when it really got out of hand. It was 1971 when Bretton Woods broke down, and there was no restraints whatsoever in the creation of new money. And they're not going to slow up. It's an addiction. And if they do, the same thing will happen. It happened in 2019 is the stocks will start down and they'll panic, but eventually just printing the money will not settle anybody's confidence. Matter of fact, it'll be doing the opposite. Eventually, every time they say, well, what do you need? More money, it's going to it'll accelerate the lack of confidence. And so they're in a difficult position. But right now, they're limping along and getting away with this because anybody who complains, I'll send you a check, I'll send you a check. But eventually the check is going to bounce because it will lose its value. But they will keep sending the checks. That I can guarantee you. They won't stop sending the checks to everybody who demands it.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
What to do in such a situation? Inform yourself and keep your financial education strong. We from the Compact Group offer our loyal subscribers a free educational portal with first-hand monetary, financial, and economic knowledge. Enter our invite-only Insider Club by clicking the link below. You will get access to first-class information far earlier than the rest. We have prepared a special deal for all our members where you can access a giant pool of Robert Kiyosaki's financial wisdom for just $1. To find out more, simply click the link below and join our Insider Club absolutely free. But there is more you can and should do. Build up several streams of income. More and more people realize that they have to take their future in their own hands, but they don't know how and where to start. We from Compact offer our Insider Club members unique opportunities. Strengthen your financial muscle and get the edge. Click the link below. Become part of our free Insider Club. No financial obligations. But there's one important thing you have to know. You have to become active. So do it now. Become active and see you on the other side.